So for those who attended yesterday night services, there was a moment that I addressed the congregation very shortly, explaining that the strength of Torah is having a team. Everybody does what needs to be done. And I gave examples, for example. Clergy, it's a word I don't love so much, but instead of going names by names, the clergy. So we met a month ago. So you are speaking this morning, you're speaking this afternoon, you are running to the family service, and you, the professionals, you will go, you will greet them, and then we have Tashlich, and then we have the Spanish, and you have the dus and yens and that, and it's all covered. So we are a team, and this is what gives us the strength. But the team is larger than those that you know and you see in the booklet with the names. We have more people in our team, besides the professionals that you also know. We have in our team a rabbi who technically is a retired rabbi, but since he's retired, 100 benefited from his rabbinate. And he will do works that no somebody else may be interested in doing or don't have the skill to do. For example, to play the guitar for somebody who is literally dying, or offer to teach the Hebrew alphabet to somebody who is scared to death because it looks like Chinese to them, and nobody will know that he's doing that. Or he will go and visit sick people, or will come and just teach Torah if needed. Talking about Rabbi Botnick, that together with Annette, the moment they came to the Torah, they entered in our life and became part of the team. They just wrote a book and it's available for you. But that's why we feel so pleased and happy that he accepted the invitation to speak to us in one of the most powerful Shabbatot in the calendar, which is Shabbat Shuvah. Bevakasha.
There's some fascinating bumper stickers. What would it be if you saw this bumper sticker? For the new year, I was finally going to give up all of my bad habits. And below those words it read, but then I thought about it. And I said to myself, nobody likes a quitter. Well, maybe it's funny, but it didn't make any changes, and the world is just as bad off. You're not quitters, you're part of today. But you know, I can't thank Beth Torah enough for the rabbis who teach and inspire us so much, for welcoming my words to you and myself today. On your behalf, I thank our Chazan for guiding us into his personal themes of music, his helping thoughts, and giving future recollections to Jewish life in our younger participants. So thank you, Rabbi Roisman, Rabbi Farber, and Cantor Ashkenazi. And I thank you who are here and those who are on live stream. And when you have seen a movie, after it's over, before they showed the screen credits, it read, "The End." The end. It labels the place where you are in the story, the end. It's not just over, because it might be even triggering you to think about that ending, to ask, and now what? Remember that thought, and now what? I looked in the Parsha, as some of you did today, because it was all read, of that of Vayelech. There are two words that sound so similar, but spelled differently, and they mean something. One is viata, and the other is viata. Viata with an aleph is saying and you. Viata with an ayin means and now. So therefore, I'm allowing us to say that percolating inside this portion is the and you and now. Last year I'd spoken about it starts with me. 1 year before I spoke about, but wait, there's more. Not for today. Today's message is, and now what? That speaks to me and I hope to you. Forgive my urgency, but now what may be the most important lesson of this holiday 10-day period. So much is hanging in the balance. Just the idea of what is awaiting us as thinking Jews in the new year and beyond could be more encouraging if we shift others' outlooks adjust ours and their actions, and certainly adapt ourselves as people. Before October 7th, 2023, much of our path as Jews seemed calm. Campuses were not scary to Jewish students. Then after these attacks and the Israeli Defense Forces' efforts to rescue hostages and defeat Hamas, up came anti-Semites and Jewish self-identified anti-Zionists who multiplied like weeds globally, and maybe even worse in our own country in surprising areas, Gewalt in academic centers. Jews became the irrational problem. I depicted to us the close of the film, The End, and how it posed to you the and now what? Shabbat Shuvah, it's time that some things come to an end, some shouldn't. Can we think together, and now what? You might know of an earlier tradition about this Shabbat. I never lived in the old country, but there were itinerant preachers that would rail in Yiddish for an hour against the congregants' sins and get them to cry. And now what? Perhaps getting the people to cry. Maybe that's cleansed them. But I don't do that today. I'm a guest rabbi. And also today I'm remembering times of my past that I wish hadn't happened. Like a number of you are feeling about instances from your own past. Regrets, deep sadness, worry, frustration. Some cannot stop years of mourning a loss. We wish that you could no longer be swallowed up by the grief of losing a loved one. But the sanctuary today is a safe place where we could be safe with our stinging memories, things we have done or could have done or that happened to us. This place of privacy is meant to give us secure moments and hopefully healing. Isn't this the right place to ask ourselves, and now what? Some are wishing for a real end to the pain of episodes that they keep revisiting. We didn't spend enough time for family that needed us. You could permit yourself to say, the end, and now what? I promise that we will examine what we can do for Israel of today and its future later this morning. A well-known Jewish meditation familiar to many of us from Sephardic culture includes the thought that the old year with its curses should end and let the new year with its blessings begin. Didn't we need an end to the old year and its curses? The end of the old year finally offers us some opportunities and even the chance to conquer some old stuff that we need to put an end to, some things that keep wearing us down. During this message, I want to look with you at some of the things that need to come to an end, and then possibly we'll be ready to ask ourselves, and now what? Do you know what triggered me in giving the thought for today of what an end triggers? Was last May. I was looking at the Israel Declaration of Independence. You remember from 1948. The document signed by David Ben-Gurion and 36 other founding signatures. We declare that with this effect, by Yom Siyum HaMandat HaBriti, shall al Eretz Yisrael, from the moment of the termination of the British mandate over the land of Israel, 5708 ER, the People's Council shall act as provisional councils, and the provisional government of the Jewish state will be called Yisrael. That announcement did it. Britain was ending the mandate over the combustible situation between Jews and armed Arab bands. But it declares to me that with the end of the British mandate, no one could block Jews from entering Israel. The declaration that the mandate was over in our state of Israel announced it was a reality, our own and now what? A place for Jews to be safe despite nations that did not want it to be our homeland. All of this after World War II, and now what? There's some special, powerful responses to the challenge of and now what? You remember songs. Pete Seeger, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? It took Joe Hickerson, who died a couple of weeks ago, a composer and a scholar of folk music, say, you know what? It needs more. It needs to talk about graveyards. It needs to talk about the graveyards went to flowers. Naomi Shemer, she had written Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold, but she said after the 6-day war, it's not finished. So therefore, it had to be something that Chazarnu, that we went back to Yerushalayim and we back to the Kotel. Different ways to express the end and now what. For most of us, the best and now what would be to achieve peace in our world, wouldn't it? In Israel, wouldn't it? In the United States, wouldn't it? And in ourselves, perhaps, to secure the return of the hostages and for the world to stop justifying their newly emerging hatred of Jews in Israel. For our world, for Israel, for this country and our psyches, asking and now what means a chance for peace more needed than anything, and reclaiming ingredients of goodness towards others. And for our world to grant us the promise of a finer understanding between nations, less greed for power in leaders, and with more vision, acting for the good of all of the people of a nation. And now what is such an important question to be asked? What can I wish ending? How about fake news, especially about Israel and the distortions that we come across? Our Israel has made so many contributions to medicine, to rehabilitation, to democracy, to the internet and technology. Those are amazing Israeli answers to the question of Biata. And now what? So many awful things have happened to Israel, and so much revealed hatred for her, even though she was mercilessly attacked. There's a horrendous amount of revised history as it pertains to Israel. And remember, its earlier name was called Palestine. A majority of Jewish college students now feel the need to hide their identities on campus for their own safety. For them, we have to come up with an and now what? All university students, Jewish and non, have to own the history of decades of terror attacks on Israelis, often on buses and restaurants and malls, while Palestinian leadership voided all potential agreements when huge amounts of West Bank land were about to be traded for Palestinian peace and military shutdown. Students and faculty have to keep reading texts that teach us about the Holocaust. We have to keep learning and being watchful for Jew hatred in the outside world. Our synagogue has been concerned about our safety and the secure place for our children who won't know how to protect themselves. That's a necessary and costly but urgent answer to our situation. And now what? Shabbat Shuvah means something significant for us personally. Think through at this time for yourselves. What are the things in your life and in yourself that should come to an end? How about impatience? How about stubbornness? Very important, can you address depression in the family? Can you see an end to some of our arguments with people? If we think about it, we can imagine how people around us will be more secure if we put an end to behaviors that we're not proud of. Should you be helping more? Go ask your family. You have feelings of resentment toward a spouse, especially without airing it out? Seeking marital counseling might be your end now. If we add that question, I pray that you can recognize that you have the capability of ending family collisions. When you give up control, I can pray that you have the ability to create the end of a bad cycle and that you give people permission to change. I can pray that you have a creative path where a tough situation ends with a hug and a compliment. Even what do you commit yourself to change? What adjustments do you owe others? What generosity can you find? Can you show generosity of spirit more to others? Did you make promises that you didn't keep? Do you know that the famous poet Robert Frost, when he had written Stopping by Woods on a snowing evening and concluded the lines, right? But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. When he was asked, what do you mean by promises to keep? He said, promises to myself and promises to my ancestors? That question presents itself again. And now what? What promises do we owe to the Jewish people, to our families, to our ancestors, and to later generations? Some of us have chosen to include Beth Torah and Jewish Federation and other positive organizations in our wills as bequests. I know a number of us have. Some have planned an ambulance for Israel. That might be the end of your being the same person. Think about what that means, that you allow yourself not to be the same person. What's the greeting that we offer after Rosh Hashanah? We say, Gemar Chatima Tova, that there's meant to be something after we have been forgiven by God. That's our own. And now what? I read a story about a couple. For 20 years, the wife had been complaining about that he didn't put the cap on the toothpaste tube. So for their anniversary, he thought to surprise her by changing the pattern. He puts the tube cap on to make his wife happy. For a week, he was diligent, always capping the toothpaste tube. He expected his wife to thank him, but she never did. So finally, 1 week later, she turned to him and said to him, "Why did you stop brushing your teeth?" Shabbat Shuvah is to allow us to grant ourselves permission to grow and change in ways we never thought. Can we remember the better selves that we were capable of being as we end that whole unhelpful chapter? How about put an end to your inertia and begin some exercises? Walk down the stairs sometimes if you can, instead of the elevator. Actually, if there's an end, there has to be an and now what? Might there be some open space in you that God could enter, such as perhaps an end to being separate from God, stop being without God in your life. Think a little bit when you sing Shema Yisrael, there's a God who's available for all of us. God might not have made cancer go away, or heal a badly damaged heart, or saved your job, but can be at our side and offer comfort and accompaniment through the darkened days of illness and doubt, and as we wait with trepidation for the diagnosis. God's caring can give hope that our own health challenges and uncertainties can be met by people who care and want us to be more whole. God's presence leads us to comforting memories. We are extensions of God's caring when we give some part of our heart or a blood transfusion. Can you be there for somebody feeling alone? In synagogue skills, could there be an end, such as an end of awkwardness? Have you finished learning Hebrew? Suggest to yourself, can I confidently do the blessings over the Torah? Maybe this year you can. Could this year be the time in which you ended saying to yourself, I'll never get to Israel? Volunteer for something. Come just to say Shabbat Shalom to another. Help in our special mitzvah Seder. You know it's going to be during Pesach. Or on a committee. Or donate just a little bit better than last year. Or as a family, we're invited to bring some food for people who are in need at this holiday time. But then there's some doctors here, so there's a healthier end. And now what? A doctor's cautions and a prescription improve your poor eating habits. And now what is spelled out? A healthier you. Did you see that blueprint that your doctors and your family hope you see to respond to their and now what? A therapist's recommendation can be guiding us away from harmful, even toxic relationships. And the recognition that some people will never change. And our need to recognize you might not get the love that you want from somebody. Pray with me for an end that leads to an and now what? I'd like to see an end to injustice, violence, slavery-like conditions, apathy about treatment to others, dictator-like people of authority. I'd like to see an end to taking the state of our environment for granted. Give thought to your and now what? We're here to celebrate abilities to ask that question. Beth Torah has succeeded over and over in administration after administration because our leadership was so skilled in asking a now what and sometimes weaving in a next candidate leadership for co-future gazing and planning. You know what ways right now we as world Jews can exercise? And now what? Never forget the Israeli rehab and counseling programs for badly harmed Israeli soldiers and civilians. Some of us each year make annual donations, contributions to Israeli Magen David Adom, Boys Town of Jerusalem. Thankfully, there are support systems for lone soldiers, Israeli military volunteers with no Israeli family around them. All that is to make a difference for a present and a future for the people in Israel. And now for the state of Israel's future, Israel bonds. With potent multi-year tools that we buy, we can remind Israel of our commitments to her long-term life and global potential to overpower and drown out the awful emergence of hatred which threatens and seeks to defame Israel. Rabid anti-Semites seem to love Hamas, don't they? They only love the now of the world situation, but committed Jews like ourselves look to the future and pay dedicated attention to the Israel of 5 years or more from now. We have read this already. The mayor of Miami-Dade County, Daniela Levine Cava, welcomed Miami's continued expanded supportive investments in Israel bonds. But her son, an anti-Zionist with a so-called Jewish Voice for Peace, South Florida, can only think about Palestine. Love the idea of Miami divesting itself of all Israel bonds. Even though Gaza's Hamas terrorists who hold hostages, these cruel fighters are shielded or given space by many of the Gaza residents. And now what? So I invite you to join Annette and me in creative and thoughtful investing in Israel emotionally. I love the idea that Israel Bonds has again offered a multi-purpose 1-year online purchased e-Shalom bond that is lent to Israel for 1 year, donated tax deductible for your nonprofit organization of choice for as little as double high, $36 per organization. Last year, we were benefactors to Beth Torah and several organizations affordably, but doing something actively for Israel's future. Melanie Weinstein of Israel Bond's office is here. She has visited many synagogues supportive of Israel. Remember, there are other synagogues in this country that wouldn't acknowledge that Israel needs to have an ongoing support, even with the difficulties politically and the difficulties in the world about Israel. There are those here and member families who are watching on live stream. There's an understandable internal struggle. We all want to love Israel, but you're pained by so many pictures, so many recent accounts of horrifying descriptions of starving Gazans. But many also either shielded or were coerced into shielding Hamas fighters, allowed them to build devastating tunnels under their own homes and underneath the neutral hospitals. If we Jews are not alert, we miss the signals that many Palestinian leaders keep hiding. They'd love to see an end to Israel, replaced fully by Palestine. Remember these facts. Please, not as a commercial, Annette and I wrote a book called A Healing Companion for Surviving When Life Happens. Its goal was to help people move forward, even to forgive God for not being able to deliver everything. We wanted people to feel free to ask, and now what? This very moment is to allow us to have a greater reality about what God can mean in our lives, alongside us, and even to grieve alongside us. Perhaps even the idea of a neutral relationship is able to be redefined. I'm thinking of 2 ministers who are fishing at the edge of a road at a pond. They thoughtfully made a sign saying, "The end is near. Turn yourself around before it is too late." And they caringly showed it to each passing car. One driver who drove by didn't appreciate the sign and shouted at them, "Leave us alone, you religious nuts." All of a sudden, they heard a big splash. looked at each other, and one said to the other, "You think maybe our sign should have said, 'Just bridge out'?" I can pray that the old year ended with enough promise for you, with enough blessings for you, and that could see you helping people around you feel that they are important, and your help ended somebody else's poor self-image. You know, with the best of and now what, you could be trusted more. You could be loved more tomorrow. You could be learning where your family will be happier. Your days ahead will be more satisfying. Your jokes will be kinder. I wanted a chance to speak to you about yourself, myself, our distressed world, and our Israel. You become the answer of, and now what? For yourself, for our world and Israel. Your watchfulness and your wisdom can allow you to be part of a better world that you helped improve. You know what that means? That means you can be the finest equation to the question, and now what? Shabbat Shalom.